what skill are you working on if everything falls down? Because I'll tell you what, I love what we do here, but I don't think a new civilization or a new self-sustaining community necessarily needs podcasters.
Bard.
History is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Hi. You can just call me Earth Shaman if you want. I had a conversation with the fella earlier today. He happens to do survival training for what we'll call operators. And of course, you know, in the course of the survival thing, the conversation occurs, you know, when is it going to hit the fan? And this individual was told by someone within that community who obviously would have access to a good amount of intelligence. They said it happened a year ago. It's just the shockwave hasn't hit us yet. So they were already making preparations to be in a more strategic location elsewhere if and when that occurs. So I didn't know if there's anything that's been covered recently. I'm kind of new to the show, but I wanted to get your guys' take on it. I think now there's enough information around to probably make some educated guesses, and none of them are nice. But thanks again. Guys, take care. Stay safe.
Oh, man. Thank you so much, Earth Shaman, for sending that to us, because you know that is just, that's a whole conversation we're about to have, and it's going to go dark, and that's okay.
Yes.
But really, thank you for having that conversation and then giving us a call and letting us know about it. So, guys, what are your immediate reactions?
He's correct.
Really?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
Really?
it depends on how you want to define this stuff, but the world is ending for someone every day, right? It just doesn't always make the news. But I think it depends on what you define as, like, what is the feces, right, hitting the fan here. If you're talking about economic problems, then it does make a lot of sense, because we're talking about the interval between when something can be said to have occurred, right? Whatever that fulcrum is, whatever that hinge moment is, and the amount of time it takes to hit the population, right? In a widely noticeable, commonly experienced way. So by those parameters, you can think of a tsunami. A tsunami doesn't hit the coast the moment the earthquake occurs on the seabed. It takes a while for the water to roll your way. And in many ways, that is what is happening now. The U.S. is in an enormously divisive time, and the U.S. is, a country obsessed with itself, so sometimes it forgets to look at global trends. There is a rise of fascism across multiple parts of the world. There are increasingly restrictive laws policing free speech. I mean, it's already happening.
Yeah, let's get into some of those specifics. But first, I want to tell you a little bit more about Earth Shaman. You guys know me. I gave the shaman a call. Want to give you some more specifics about what he was stating there. This is obviously a secondhand story. We know that from what he said. It's a person he talked to who had spoken to somebody else, right? It's a third-hand story, whatever. And so we don't have a lot of specifics. That person wasn't being specific when they talked to Earth Shaman about what that thing was that happened a year ago, but the conversation took place roughly a month ago from today. So in June, mid-June. So then if we're talking about a year ago and we want to really speculate on a thing, an event, or whatever this bomb was that went off that we're going to feel a shockwave from, it's sometime in 2021. It's what we're thinking here. Earth Shaman noted that the economic stimulus payments stopped at a certain date. He was just wondering if that might have something to do with it. We were also talking, we mentioned the instance that occurred on January 6th, 2021. And there are a couple other things. I just want to kind of throw some things out at you guys and see what you think about them. Stuff that happened in 2021. There was the United States rejoining the Paris Climate Accords and NATO. That was one of the major things that occurred. The U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, which is, you know, if you're thinking about military action and then major consequences to something that occurred, that's a big one. There was, what else happened in 2021, guys? I'm trying to think of the other major things.
There's that one thing.
Ton of earthquakes.
Yeah.
There was that pandemic thing.
That was old beans by 2021.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking about? The major power outages that occurred in Texas. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Where like the entire
the
grid
sequel's
went down.
coming.
To me, this is
coming.
climate change related, you know, and I was thinking about that stuff, and also how like there's a new story that's been going around about the heat waves in the UK, how like planes aren't able to land because like the runways are melting and like people are like dying and homes are burning down.
Yeah,
you know? I mean, I think it's climate change related shoe that we're seeing drop, you know, on the regular.
To me, it's got to be civil unrest, because civil unrest is the thing that's going to tear down, like stop everything from working.
Consider the source too. This is an operator, and so they're more likely than average to be referring to political unrest. The statistics are there. You know, I was talking with our pal Robert Evans about this a while back, quite a while back. He has an excellent podcast called It Could Happen Here. Do check it out. The issue is that you can see you have to fight your own desire to classify everything as an understandable and predictable pattern. But while doing that, you cannot avoid the similarities in domestic U.S. politics. You can't avoid the similarities they bear to the time leading up to the U.S. Civil War, which again is just a terrible name because it was very rude and brutish and cruel and nasty. It was very much not civil. But does this mean that a civil war, an actual war, will occur? Not necessarily. It does mean that there may be secessionist movements that gain more steam than usual. A lot of times secessionist movements simply don't have the training and the tactical knowledge that they would need to even stand a chance. And I think one mistake a lot of people make when they talk about the idea of secessionist groups or home-trained, home-cooked militias starting war, they forget that the enormity of the U.S. military and intelligence apparatus. It is fucking frightening, and they will rain fire because they do, like, if there's a serious secessionist, then I guarantee you, unless the military and the top brass are compromised, their approach is going to be cut this off immediately. We'll handle whatever PR occurs afterwards. It's true. They're not playing around.
We'll send flamethrower vehicles into that compound. We've seen it before. Wow. Okay, well, guys, yeah, that's definitely my thinking, that there's going to be some kind of desperation in enough people, because I think we talked about this too. It's related. I really do feel like infrastructure is going to break down due to extreme hot, cold, storm, you name it. And if it breaks down on a wide enough scale for a long enough time, then the people, you know, with the guns will attempt to get what they need, and the people in charge of maintaining order will also use their guns. And that's when it feels like stuff really breaks.
And nobody sees themselves as the bad guy.
No.
In this situation.
No.
That's important human thing to remember.
Well, we've also talked about things like water wars and water disputes and how like those types of climate migrants. And these are all related. I mean, you know, you're going to have climate change issues that result in fires, and then when people get displaced, then they become civilly unrestful, let's just say. And the same thing with like scarcity and, you know, things that we need to survive, like water and food and all of that stuff that's going to, you know, further hit the fan when the other thing hits the fan. It's a series of very tenuously placed dominoes.
Well, let's talk about what Earth Shaman is doing, because this is, I'm going to give you a little more context. This is why he had the conversation, and this is why I think he's a very helpful person to learn stuff from. Shaman has military experience, and Shaman also is very good at some survival stuff, like foraging. He's excellent at foraging. He also grows food. He's a farmer. And he talked to this person that he mentions in his call at, a farmer's market, where there are a bunch of farmers getting together to sell their wares to other people. And the discussion was, we need to strengthen our ties as farmers, because we are going to have our own little microeconomy when the rest of the economy collapses, because we'll be able to barter your microgreens for my mushrooms, whatever, your butternut squash for my corn. And I don't know, that just feels like a really smart thing to do, to have those kind of contacts and to have something that is barterable in those times. If not to manufacture it, to at least have a good amount of something.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, because one huge difference between, like, again, not to be alarmist, but just hypothetically thinking through the difference between a civil war in 2022 or 2023 really, versus a civil war in the 1800s, is the prevalence of technology and the dependence upon global supply chains. During the time of the Civil War, the U.S. was still, in its majority, an agrarian economy. That is no longer the case. And it's quite intelligent, I would say, Shaman, to have this sort of self-reliant skill. If you go to the Great Depression in the 1930s in the United States, another terrible name, by the way, because it was not great. It was, it sucked, but but they didn't want to call it the sucky depression. Anyhow, the idea there, what we saw happening was that these micro communities did propagate. They did generate, right? Because you can't afford to buy things, but you still have the same amount of time you had, the only true currency in the world. So you prioritize and reallocate that time to refining and practicing your skills that are useful to that local community. You grow the food and you trade the food, and you find out that, paper money and coins, they're nice, but you can't eat them. They don't even really burn that well if you're trying to start a fire. So there is, it's a philosophical paradigm shift, but it also makes me think of a question that I have for you, Matt, and for you, Noel, and for everybody listening, because Earth Shaman is an example for the class. Earth Shaman has a skill, right? So my question for you and all our folks tuning in to this week's listener mail segment is, what skill are you working on if everything falls down? Because I'll tell you what, I love what we do here, but I don't think a new civilization or a new self-sustaining community necessarily needs podcasters.
Bard. I'm going to be a bard.